On New Year's Eve, while the fireworks lit up the night sky on live television, my fiancé, Wesley Harrington, was passionately kissing another woman. At that exact moment, a message popped up on my phone from Wesley himself. Right on time. Serafina, Happy New Year. Tomorrow you will be my wife. I can't wait. Another message followed immediately, but this one was from an unfamiliar number. The attached photo was explicit, vulgar, and the caption beneath it was cruelly blunt. Your man's stamina is impressive. Finished once and already hard again. I stared at the screen in silence, every word cutting deeper than the last. Then I reached for the red background ID photo Wesley and I had taken for our marriage certificate and tore it to shreds with trembling hands. Wesley, there will be no tomorrow for us. Outside, the fireworks continued in a riot of light and noise, even audible from the quiet of our residential block. But I was frozen in place, staring at the large screen where the two of them, my soon-to-be husband and the woman in his arms, kissed like no one else existed. He held her as though she were his entire world, and as I watched him press his lips to hers, the scheduled message he had sent to me hours earlier felt like nothing more than a cruel joke. Then came another message notification, a friend request from the same number that had sent the photo. My blood ran cold. The house around me was silent, too silent. I could only hear my own heartbeat, loud and erratic in my ears. I reached for the ID photo again and shredded what little was left of it into fine pieces. My fingers were cold, my face stung. When I lifted my hand to touch my cheek, it came away wet with tears I had not even noticed falling. A bitter, broken laugh escaped me, one that sounded more like a sob. I slumped onto the couch, drained and hollow. Wesley and I had been childhood sweethearts. He had first confessed his feelings to me at another New Year's Eve fireworks show. Back when we were just out of high school, I could still see the nervous smile on his face, the way he tried to act cool even though his ears were red and his hands shook as he held the bouquet. Serafina Beaumont, he had said, "Will you be my girlfriend?" I had nodded through a daze of surprise and affection. The memory of him lifting me in a joyful spin was still etched into my mind, for the next 7 years. We were everyone's favorite couple. The Harringtons and the Beaumonts were longtime business partners, and our relationship was not only accepted, it was celebrated. Wesley was devoted. He cared for me down to every detail. He knew my schedule better than I did. He remembered anniversaries, managed my calendar, and even kept track of my cycle. Once, during a car accident, his first instinct had been to shield me. He ended up with a broken leg and spent 3 months in a wheelchair. I, by contrast, had only a minor scratch. My parents often said he treated me like I was made of stardust, too precious for this world. Even while covered in bruises, he had looked at me through his pain and said, "Serafina is like the moon. If I don't cherish her, someone else will." So how had someone who once loved me so deeply changed so suddenly? I sat motionless through the long, cold night, when the front door finally opened and Wesley walked in, pulling me into his arms. It took me a moment to remember how to breathe. I turned my head to avoid his kiss. My voice was sharp, colder than I intended. "Where were you?" He hesitated, just a moment, his eyes shifting away from mine. "There was a lot going on at the office last night. You know how important this project is. If I can close this deal, it means I can take even better care of you." He spoke with the same warm tone he always used to calm me. You would never guess anything was wrong. But the unfamiliar perfume clinging to his suit hit me like a punch to the chest. I closed my eyes for a moment and caught sight of the lipstick smudge on his tie. I forced a smile and lied. "My ID expired. We should wait to get married until I can renew it. Is that okay?" I was never good at lying. Wesley always said I was the worst liar. He could see right through me every time. But this time, he simply nodded and said nothing more, as though he had not noticed anything unusual at all. There was a flicker of something in his eyes, something like quiet satisfaction, but it vanished quickly. With a tired yawn, he stretched and said he was going to bed. I gave a stiff nod, my heart sinking like a stone into an icy sea. Then came the soft buzz of another message. I shut my eyes for a moment, steadying my trembling fingers before accepting the friend request. Within seconds, dozens of photos flooded the screen. Shameless, wild, in every frame, Wesley's expression was unrestrained. His arm clinging tightly to a woman's slender waist, his eyes dark with desire, a side of him I had never seen. Wesley had always been gentle with me, even in our most intimate moments, restrained, respectful, but in those images, he looked like a man completely consumed, lost in a hunger he never showed me. And the woman in the pictures, I recognized her, Eloise Pembroke, Wesley's assistant. A message arrived shortly after. "Do you have time to meet?" I stared at the words for a long while, then, with a heaviness I could not explain, I agreed. All right. When I walked into the private lounge, Eloise was already there. Curled hair cascading over her shoulders, scarlet lipstick perfectly applied, she smiled, a slow and sultry thing. Her blouse was unbuttoned far too low, revealing skin still marked with the traces of passion. Gone was the composed, capable assistant. In her place sat a woman radiating conquest. She tilted her head and greeted me, her voice rich with amusement. "Miss Beaumont, I assumed that by agreeing to meet, you already know." I averted my eyes, embarrassed, a dull ache blooming behind my ribs. She set her untouched coffee aside and took a moment to study the tension on my face before speaking, almost lazily. "I am pregnant." She did not notice the way my face went pale, how my body tensed at those two simple words. She simply placed a hand over her flat belly, her eyes softening with imagined maternal tenderness. I dug my fingernails into my palm so hard it broke the skin, but I felt no pain, only a crushing tightness in my chest, like I could not breathe. My breath was shallow, ragged, but Eloise continued as if I were not even there. "I just found out the day before yesterday, Miss Beaumont. I hope you can do the right thing. Please break up with Wesley. I do not want to raise this child without a father. Besides, Wesley does not love you. He is always complaining about you, your spoiled attitude. How a woman your age still cannot take care of herself. He says he prefers someone like me, a woman who is capable, not a helpless little girl." So that was how Wesley spoke of me. Spoiled, useless, immature. I let out a breathless laugh. It sounded hollow. Even to me. I looked at the woman across from me, so self-assured, so triumphant, and for a moment I felt like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. There was a time I was admired for my strength and intelligence, top of my class year after year. At 15, I negotiated my parents' first contract on my own. My older brother was constantly scolded in comparison to me. I was always the one they expected to inherit everything, but I loved Wesley. I loved him so much that I gave it all up. My career, my future, just to be with him. And now, this man I trusted with my entire life saw me as a joke, a burden. He made me a laughingstock in front of the woman he chose to replace me. I could no longer hold myself together. The pain broke through, and I stumbled to my feet, rushing out of the lounge with barely a word. I drifted through the crowd outside like a ghost, lost and fragile. The streets were bright with New Year decorations. Shops blared music and laughter. Couples walked hand in hand, faces glowing with joy, but I moved forward in silence, each step as if I were walking barefoot across broken glass. This street, Wesley and I had walked it so many times. I could still see us, smiling, sharing sweet nothings. All of it now felt like a dream I had woken from too late. I remembered when we had just started dating, how he brought me to the back of this old street where a small temple stood. He said we should draw a fortune stick together, to see what our future would hold. The elderly monk smiled kindly at us back then and told us we were fated to meet. Now, looking back, I finally understood. He never said we were destined to stay, just that we were destined to cross paths, a fleeting moment of fate. No more, no less. The sudden surge and drop of emotion sent a sharp pain coursing through my lower abdomen. My face turned ghostly pale, and I had no choice but to sit down on the edge of the street to catch my breath. A kind girl passing by noticed my condition and handed me some brown sugar and tissues. I looked around at the lively street, still bustling just like every other year, and quietly, tears slipped down my cheeks. The flowers bloom the same each season, yet the people change year after year. It was not until the sky turned completely dark and the neon lights flickered to life that I finally stood up, ready to return to my parents' house to rest. When I turned on my phone, the screen lit up with dozens of missed calls. I stared at them in confusion. Before I could even process what was happening, another call from Wesley came through. I hesitated. I did not want to hear his voice, but in the end, I answered. His voice was loud and accusatory from the start. "Serafina, why have you been ignoring my calls all afternoon?" He did not wait for an answer. "Do you even realize what you have done? Eloise was so upset because of you that she almost lost the baby. Get to the hospital right now and apologize to her. I opened my mouth, trying to say something, but he had already hung up. The shrill sound of the call ending rang in my ears, sharp and jarring. My whole body trembled. It took me a long while to gather myself before I finally hailed a cab and headed to the hospital. In the hospital room, Wesley sat beside Eloise, his face gentle. Speaking to her in a voice I had not heard in a long time, they looked calm, almost peaceful. Until I walked in, Eloise's eyes immediately filled with fear. She fell silent, shrinking back like a frightened child. If I had not known better, I might have believed I really had done something awful. Wesley's expression darkened the moment he saw me. He stood, his tall frame looming as he approached, a weight of judgment behind every step. "Serafina," he said with a deep frown. "You had no right to make things difficult for Eloise." His eyes narrowed in disappointment. "She is my right hand at the company, a key part of our current project. She is still showing up to work even while pregnant. How could you try to force her out, even if you are upset with her? You should know how fragile pregnancy can be. What if something happens to the baby?" So this is how much Wesley cares for her, for Eloise, and for their child, cares enough to lose all reason. Cares enough to let her accuse me of things I never did. I gave a bitter laugh and looked up at the man I had loved for 7 years. 7 years, even though we were never married, he had become my family. He had belittled my capabilities, mocked my personality, and yet, I never thought he would condemn me without even asking for the truth. I swallowed hard and looked away, forcing out my words through clenched teeth. I never made things difficult for her. I never asked her to leave the company. Before I could finish, Eloise cut in, her voice full of false innocence. "Miss Beaumont, I never meant to come between you and Mr. Harrington. My body is just very weak, and I have been under a lot of stress because of work. The baby is not very stable either." She lowered her gaze, biting her lip as she added with feigned reluctance, "Once this project is over, I will hand in my resignation. I do not want to come between you two any longer." She looked pitiful. With her pale face and watery eyes, nothing like the bold, confident woman I had seen only hours earlier, I stared at her coldly, a sharp edge to my voice. "Eloise, with acting skills like that, have you ever considered a career in film? It must be exhausting to twist the truth and turn everyone against each other like this." I felt a rising tide of anger, watching her play the victim so skillfully. "Fine, you win. Everything is my fault. I am the one with the bad intentions. The one causing drama. All right." She immediately dropped her head and began to sob, curling up as if she were the one who had been wronged beyond measure. "Serafina, have you had enough?" Wesley grabbed my wrist hard, his voice sharp with frustration. "The company is under a lot of pressure right now. I do not have time to deal with your spoiled tantrums. Can you stop creating problems for once?" He said he was busy with the company. Really, a deep chill settled in my chest as I looked at him, a bitter smile curling at my lips. "You know better than I do whether you have really been busy with work, or something else." For a split second, a flicker of guilt passed through Wesley's eyes, but he quickly masked it with growing impatience. His gaze turned sharp and cold, brimming with annoyance as he looked at me. On the hospital bed, Eloise still had tears on her face, but her eyes glinted with triumph and contempt. She gave me a silent, smug challenge with just a glance. Wesley's voice rose in anger. I said, "Apologize." Then, without warning, he shoved me hard. I stumbled backward and crashed to the ground beside the hospital bed. My knee slammed into the hard floor, and the delicate skin on my wrist was scraped raw. I bit down on the pain and slowly stood up, my heart aching with humiliation. Then, with no hesitation, I slapped Wesley across the face. Eloise let out a sharp gasp. "Serafina, how could you? Mr. Harrington treats you so well, and yet you hit someone. That is too much." Before she could finish, another crisp slap rang out in the room. Wesley stood frozen in disbelief, and Eloise looked absolutely terrified. Her face pale, I flexed my sore wrist and said coolly, "I do not hit pregnant women. That one was on your behalf, Eloise." I looked up at Wesley's stunned expression and laughed. Low and bitter, "Wesley, we are done. I am breaking up with you." A long silence followed. I no longer wanted to waste another breath on either of them. I turned to leave, but Wesley grabbed my arm roughly. "Serafina, do not go too far," he growled, his voice low and threatening. His face twisted into something dark and unfamiliar. I yanked my arm free and sneered, "What is wrong?" Can't keep up the act anymore. Panic flashed in his eyes, and he took a step back, but then, as if remembering something, he straightened up and smirked. How many times have you said you were leaving me over the years, and each time, you came crawling back? Let's not make this ugly, Serafina. You are only embarrassing yourself. He had barely finished the sentence when I turned away. You do not need to worry. Mr. Harrington, I said coldly, walking toward the door. This time, I will not be coming back. By the time I dragged my exhausted body back to my parents' house, the weight of everything finally collapsed on me. When I saw them groggily get out of bed to welcome me, tears surged to my eyes. I threw myself into their arms and broke down completely. I do not want to marry Wesley. I am done with that bastard. I want out. The words came in gasps, soaked in sobs. My mother clutched me tightly, nearly crying herself. My father's face turned grave. Without a word, he picked up the phone and called my brother overseas. By the time my brother Tristan rushed back home, covered in dust from travel, I had just woken up. The grief and fatigue had been too much. I had cried myself to sleep the night before, and now my eyes were so swollen they looked like walnuts. I sat blankly at the breakfast table, dazed and quiet. What happened? That bastard Wesley hurt you, my brother roared, his fists clenched. Say the word and I will go break his face right now. I swear, if I do not, you can flip my name backwards. My mother shot him a sharp glare, and he reluctantly calmed down, still fuming as he sat down at the table and bit fiercely into a piece of bread. Dad finally spoke up. We asked you to come back because of your sister. Didn't you sign a contract with Harrington Corporation a while ago? He asked. Tristan scratched his head and thought for a moment. Oh, right, I remember now. He slapped his forehead, jumped up, and went upstairs to discuss it with Dad. That left just me and Mom at the table. Exchanging quiet glances, my phone began to ring furiously, making me jump. I quickly picked it up. It was my best friend, Shen Yuan, on the line. Her voice was urgent. Serafina, check the messages I sent you right now. She barely paused for breath before continuing. Did you and Wesley get into a fight last night? The photos are everywhere. Someone leaked them. Everyone in our social circle is talking about it. Stunned, I ended the call and opened the files she had forwarded. I scanned the documents quickly. The photos were obviously taken in secret, and the captions, those captions were filled with venom, twisting the truth into some outrageous tale, painting me as a spoiled, arrogant heiress bullying those beneath her. I frowned deeply, my thoughts swirling. For this kind of rumor to spread so rapidly within hours, it could not be a coincidence. Someone had orchestrated this, carefully and deliberately. Even the paparazzi must have been hired in advance. Though there were ways to control the damage, responding too quickly would only fuel more speculation, give people even more to gossip about. Just as I was thinking this through, a new message appeared from Eloise. I clicked it open. The words were sharp, taunting, and impossible to ignore. Consider this your breakup gift. Do you like it? Hope you are enjoying it. You kept Wesley all to yourself for years, forcing us to sneak around in the dark. This is what you deserve. Soon, Wesley and I will be married, and you will always be the one who lost. A lunatic, I muttered under my breath and immediately blocked and deleted her contact. But I had barely gathered myself when I heard a knock at the front door. The housekeeper peeked outside and then approached me hesitantly. Miss, it is Mr. Harrington. He is at the door. My mother, who had been sitting nearby, looked at me gently. Do you want to see him? I nodded once. She rose with a nod of her own and quietly made her way upstairs. Wesley walked in looking calm, even composed. He actually had the nerve to smile when he saw me. Serafina, stop being upset, he said lightly. Last night, I was too impatient, I admit it. And I know I have not been spending enough time with you lately. Let us just get married. Once this project is done, I will take you on that honeymoon we talked about. He stepped closer, reaching for my hand like nothing had changed. Like he was still the Wesley who used to indulge my every whim. The large sitting room echoed with silence, just the two of us. I stared at that familiar, tender expression on his face, and felt nothing but disgust. You and Eloise, truly a perfect match, I said flatly. I stepped back from his outstretched hand and rose to my feet. His expression froze. He stared at me in disbelief before grinding out a question between clenched teeth. When did you find out? I had thought I was over this. That I had detached myself enough to feel nothing. But hearing him admit it out loud, it still hurt, a deep, dull ache that pulsed through my chest. "Does it matter when I found out?" I replied, my voice low and laced with contempt. "Get out, I do not want to see you again." I moved to call for the butler, but Wesley beat me to it. He raised a hand and barked, "Don't." Then he laughed coldly, a bitter edge in his voice. "Serafina, do not flatter yourself, I did not come here for you. I came to speak with your brother, Tristan Beaumont. We have business to discuss." My brother had been trying his best to stay calm for my sake, though the way his face darkened said he was barely containing his rage. Still, ever the professional, he allowed Wesley to speak, listening until the end. But it was a waste of breath, because Wesley had never intended to deal with us in good faith. Not from the start. The loophole in that contract was massive. To patch it now would cost a fortune, an astronomical figure so high even my father, who had weathered countless storms in the financial world, could not help but frown deeply. "You son of a..." My brother's voice trembled with rage. "You tricked us. You actually planned this." His eyes were red, and his hands shook as he flipped through the contract, disbelief etched across his face. Wesley merely smiled and waved his hand lazily, like someone brushing off a minor inconvenience. "Such ugly words, there is no need for dramatics." With a smirk tugging at the corners of his mouth, he rubbed his ear and added, "You know, you still had a chance. Because of my years with Serafina, if she had just been a little more cooperative, things would not have come to this." He paused and then sighed with mock regret. "Shame, really. I gave her plenty of opportunities." There it was, the mask was off. Wesley had completely shed his polished, gentlemanly facade. What remained was a fox, slick, calculating, and unapologetically cruel. My family could only stare, hearts pounding and hands trembling, as he walked leisurely toward the front door. "You have 1 month left," he said as he reached the threshold. "Enjoy your final days of luxury." The sound of the door slamming shut echoed through the house like a gunshot, rattling every nerve. My brother collapsed onto the couch, burying his face in his hands with frustration and regret. My mother, pale and stricken, hurried to give my father his heart medication. "That bastard," my brother shouted, "it's all my fault. If only I had been more careful." But how could it be his fault? It was me who had brought Wesley into our lives so early. If I had not been with him from the start, my brother would never have treated him like family, never would have trusted him so blindly. My chest twisted with guilt so sharp it made me sick. A wave of nausea swept over me, leaving me dizzy. "It's all right, brother," I managed, trying to stand. "I will find a way." But the moment I pushed off the floor, my knees buckled, I collapsed in place, and the last thing I heard before everything went black was my family crying out my name. When I opened my eyes again, I was in a hospital bed. My mother sat beside me, her face haggard with worry. The moment she saw me awake, her eyes brimmed with tears. She clutched my cold hand, her voice trembling with sorrow. "Serafina, my poor girl, how could this happen? How could you be pregnant now?" My breath caught in my throat. I lay frozen for a moment, then slowly reached down, placing a hand on my still flat stomach. Pregnant, there was already a child growing inside me. Tears streamed silently down my cheeks, splashing against my skin. My mind was a storm of confusion. How could this happen now, of all times? What was I supposed to do? But when I turned and saw my mother, her hair now streaked with silver, her face aged seemingly overnight, I forced myself to sit up. I wiped the tears from my face with the back of my hand. My parents were aging. Our family had no one else to depend on but me and my brother. No matter how painful or hopeless things seemed, no matter how much it hurt, I had to pull myself together. I had to fix the company crisis first. With renewed focus, I sifted through every connection and relationship I had built over the years, desperate to find a solution. But people are wired for self-preservation. Those who could have helped had already been quietly warned off. Wesley had planned this well. He was determined to ruin us and leave us with nothing. I spent the entire day thinking of every possible way out, but not a single hand reached back, even the legal teams we consulted. Some of the most experienced professionals in the field admitted it was a tangled, near-impossible case. Then I heard the news. Damien Kingsley had returned to the country. It was a shot in the dark, but I messaged him anyway. To my surprise, he replied right away and agreed to take on the case. Damien had once been my classmate. After graduation, he had earned a full scholarship to study law overseas. He had handled several high-profile cases abroad and gained a reputation for being razor-sharp and relentless. If there was anyone I trusted to handle this, it was him. The very next day, he came straight to the hospital to see me. He walked in, calm and confident as ever, and offered a warm smile. "Serafina," he said, his voice familiar and steady, "it has been a long time." In the days that followed, I buried myself in work. All my focus was on the company. Luckily, it was still early in the pregnancy, and the symptoms were mild, but even so, the mental strain and constant stress took a toll. I fell ill several times from exhaustion. During one of my routine prenatal checkups, I happened to run into someone both familiar and unwanted. It was Eloise. She had lost a noticeable amount of weight in just a month. Her face looked hollow, her complexion sallow, the spark she once carried had dimmed. She saw me too, and in that brief moment, her tired eyes flared with open hostility. I had no intention of speaking to her. I had hoped we could simply pass by like strangers, but she had other plans. "Serafina, you worthless wretch," her shrill voice rang out as she blocked my path. Her face was twisted with rage. "What tricks are you playing now? Wesley has been colder and colder to me. Is it because of you, you manipulative, shameless woman?" Then her gaze dropped, landing on the slight swell beneath my coat. She froze. No wonder. No wonder Wesley refuses to marry me. She stumbled backward, nearly collapsing, but still glared at me with burning hatred. Her lips continued to spit venom, laced with bitterness and jealousy. Her commotion soon caught the attention of the hospital staff. Several nurses rushed over and gently led her away. Trying to calm her down, I remained frozen in place, my body motionless, my thoughts spinning. Wesley had once placed so much importance on Eloise, on her child. He was willing to betray me, to lie and deceive, just to be with her. Now that I had stepped aside, the path should have been clear for them. They should have been happy, united, but from the look in her eyes, something had changed. I shook my head, forcing myself to push away the doubt rising in my chest. Now was not the time for distractions. But fate seemed determined to test me. Just as I stepped out of the hospital, I ran straight into the one person I least wanted to see, Wesley. He stood there in the winter light, looking far more weathered than I remembered. His clothes were wrinkled, his posture careless, but his smirk remained intact. "Look at you," he said, slowly and smugly, "falling apart without me." His eyes roamed over me, openly assessing. My clothes were practical, my hair pulled back, no makeup, no heels, just comfort over vanity. I was clearly no longer the polished woman he once knew. I said nothing and tried to move past him, but he raised a hand to block my way. "Wesley," I sighed, growing impatient, "your girlfriend is still inside the hospital." I could not help the sharp edge in my voice. "Do you really have time to harass me right now? Shouldn't you be with Miss Pembroke, your beloved?" His face twitched with something close to irritation, but just as he was about to retort, his eyes dropped to the paper in my hand, and then to the small curve of my stomach. "You are pregnant." His expression hardened. In one swift motion, he reached out, his rough fingers nearly grazing my abdomen. "Whose child is it? Answer me, Serafina. If you just explain, I might still be willing to give you a chance. I will make sure your family does not suffer." His voice rose with each word, nearly shouting by the end. The arrogance, the threat, it all came pouring out at once. My hands trembled, my breath caught in my throat. I stared at him, a fire of anger and pain erupting inside me. "What does it matter to you, Wesley? Whoever the father is, it is not you." The fury in his eyes deepened. He clenched his jaw, repeated the word "fine" several times under his breath, then grabbed my arm and began dragging me back toward the hospital. "What are you doing? Let me go," he sneered, his grip tightening. "Getting rid of it. This man is insane." I fought back, struggling with all my strength, but he was too strong. "Serafina, why are you still outside?" A voice cut through the chaos. Familiar, steady, and warm. I looked up, breathless, and saw Damien Kingsley rushing toward me, concern etched across his face. "Your parents are worried sick." Wesley froze. He let go of my arm and narrowed his eyes, now filled with suspicion. "Damien Kingsley, why are you back?" Then, with a mocking grin, he added, "Ran out of women overseas, did you? Calling my ex-girlfriend by name like she still belongs to you." Damien Kingsley paid no attention to Wesley's outburst. He focused instead on me, checking me carefully to make sure I was truly all right. Then, with quiet patience, he reached out and gently tucked a few loose strands of hair behind my ear. Serafina is my girlfriend now. Her health is no longer your concern, Mr. Harrington. He stood calmly at my side, one hand resting protectively near my shoulder. Never even sparing Wesley a glance, Wesley laughed, not with amusement, but with barely contained fury, his lips curled into something between a sneer and a grimace. Well done, Serafina, really well done, he muttered through gritted teeth as he watched Damien guide me away. Neither Damien nor I noticed the flicker of madness in Wesley's eyes as we walked off. The shadow of obsession etched across his face. After a long silence in the car, I finally gathered the courage to speak. Thank you. For earlier, I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. Damien's fingers on the steering wheel tensed for a moment, then slowly relaxed as he returned to his usual composed expression. You do not have to thank me, it was the right thing to do. A beat passed before he added quietly, with all the evidence we now have, our chances of winning just got much better. Leaning back in my seat, I let out a breath I had not realized I was holding. His words gave me the first glimmer of relief in days, but my body still ached from time to time, especially my lower abdomen. I frowned slightly, remembering what the doctor had told me not long ago. Your body is ready. The termination procedure can be scheduled now. I had closed my eyes then, and I closed them again now, knowing the decision had already been made. The surgery itself was over quickly, but no matter how fast it was, it still left my body frail and in need of recovery. I remained in the hospital for a period of quiet convalescence. During that short stretch of time, my phone was bombarded daily with vicious texts from unknown numbers. Some cursed me, some threatened me. I did not even have to trace them to guess who was behind it. Wesley's assistant, Eloise. From her bitter, hateful messages, I managed to piece together what had become of her. She had lost the baby. It happened during one of Wesley's drunken, volatile moods. Afterward, she had clung to him obsessively, overcome with fear and insecurity. She refused to leave his side. At first, Wesley showed some guilt. He offered sweet words, soft reassurances, but soon enough, he grew impatient. He ended things with her abruptly and even fired her from the company. Now she lived in a cramped, cheap shared apartment. She could not even afford post-surgery medication, TSK. I rubbed the tension between my brows and did something I never thought I would. I sent a friend request to the account I had once blocked, then I typed out a message. I know something about Wesley, meet me tomorrow at 5. This address. It did not take long. Almost instantly, Eloise replied. She added a single line. Come alone. The location she gave was a half-finished building, long since abandoned. I hesitated. My fingers hovered over my phone. But in the end, I agreed. Damien, of course, was worried. He urged me not to go, but I had made up my mind. If there was even the slimmest chance to defeat Wesley, I needed to take it. I had to secure that chance with my own hands, because the price of losing was one I could not afford. I arrived at the agreed-upon place right on time. As I stepped into the shadows of the structure, Wesley appeared, his grin wide, his eyes gleaming with arrogance. Surprised, he said with a smirk. He stepped closer, lifting a hand to brush my cheek the way he used to, a sick imitation of tenderness. Behind him, slumped against the wall, was Eloise. Her clothes were torn, her expression vacant. She looked half-conscious, like a broken doll. I did some digging, Wesley said cheerfully. His tone was light, but his eyes were cold. He reached for my collar, smoothing it as though he cared, then gave my head a patronizing pat. This little whore tried to turn us against each other. She is the reason we ended up like this. So I gave her the punishment she deserved, and that baby, our baby, if it were not for their interference, we would still have it. But that is all right. He leaned in closer, his voice low and full of twisted affection. We will just make another. Wesley let out a hearty laugh as he stepped down hard on Eloise's fingers. His eyes, however, sparkled with intensity as he looked straight at me. Serafina, he said, his voice soft and coaxing. I regret everything. When I saw you with Damien Kingsley, you have no idea how jealous I was. So please, come back to me. I will drop the investigation into the loopholes in that contract. I will spare the Beaumont family. All I ask is that you return to me. When I did not respond, when I stood there silent and unmoving, the smile slowly faded from his face. With a sigh, He shrugged, then reached for a tablet handed to him by someone nearby and held it up in front of me. The screen lit up with a live feed. I recognized the setting instantly, and my heart clenched. It was my childhood home. On the screen, I saw my brother and Damien tied to chairs. My parents were backed into a corner, surrounded by several large, threatening men. My breath caught in my throat. I gritted my teeth, resisting the overwhelming urge to slap Wesley across the face. "Wesley," I said, voice shaking with disbelief. "Are you out of your mind?" He leaned in, the tablet screen going black as he pressed a cold kiss to my trembling eyelids. "Marry me, Serafina," he whispered, "and this will all be over. This way, everyone stays safe." A soft, broken laugh echoed from the ground. It was Eloise. No one had noticed her sit up. Her body was still blooded and bruised, her face nearly unrecognizable, but she smiled with sharp cruelty. "Wesley," she spat, "your promises are worth less than air." Wesley's brow furrowed. He made a slight gesture toward the guards, but I grabbed his arm before they could act. "So you are saying," I said steadily, "that if I marry you, you will let the Beaumonts go, you will drop the contract fraud, and you will stop hurting my family." His lips curled into a smug grin. The look in his eyes was the same one you would give a pet that had finally learned to behave. After a moment's thought, he gave me a slow, condescending nod. "Yes. That is exactly what I am saying. All I want is you. You are worth more than all of this combined." He pulled me into his arms and whispered sweet nothings, hollow and rehearsed. The moment his hand brushed against my skin, I felt a wave of revulsion. I took a deep breath, steadied my voice, and replied softly, "No, what?" He blinked, stunned, and then it happened. From every direction, armed officers stormed the building, shouting commands as they swiftly secured the entire site. "Freeze. Nobody move." Wesley narrowed his eyes, his jaw tightening as the chaos unfolded around him. He turned to me with a cold sneer. "You called them, you planned this all along, and yet, you are not worried about your family." By then, both Eloise and I had been escorted to safety under the protection of the police. I stood tall, met his gaze, and answered clearly, "I would rather trust the law than put my faith in a man who would do anything to get his way." "You say you would have spared them if I gave in. But I know you never planned to stop. My brother nearly died in a car accident. Someone planted flowers in my father's room that triggered his allergies. My mother has been harassed and threatened more than once. Wesley, you are the one who made it impossible for my family to live in peace, so do not blame anyone else for where you are now." What followed moved quickly, with the recordings we captured and Eloise's testimony. The Beaumont family was cleared of all accusations. As for my brother Tristan, he did not get off so easily. Our parents were so furious that they chased him around the house for days, demanding to know why he had not warned us sooner. He ended up with a bruised backside and had to stay in bed, face down. For nearly a week, Wesley was arrested and taken to prison. Around the same time, Damien Kingsley submitted a thick stack of documents he had quietly gathered to the authorities, evidence that, on its own, was enough to earn Wesley a life sentence. I was stunned. I could not figure out where Damien had found so much damaging information, but every time I asked, he brushed it off, never giving a straight answer. It was only later that I learned the truth. Before he had even returned to the country, Damien had already activated his network, gathering every piece of evidence he could find. His plan was simple: if we lost the lawsuit, then Wesley would face justice another way. That is right, he was pursuing me. The moment Wesley was taken into custody, Damien confessed his feelings for me, but I told him honestly, I was not ready for love, not now. He just smiled and said that was all right, he would wait for me. As for Eloise, she received the substantial payment I had promised her. Say what you will, she had risked everything to help take Wesley down. She took the money and quietly left the country to continue her studies abroad. In the end, we had both been victims. There was no point in dragging each other down further. Wesley's case was long and complex. It took months before the court finally handed down its ruling, death penalty. I was sitting in my sunroom when I heard the news, gently stroking the kitten Damien had given me as a gift. When the message came through, my fingers paused for just a moment before moving again. Before his execution, Wesley refused to see his parents. He only asked to see me. I thought about it for a long time. In the end, I went. We had known each other for over 20 years. I could not turn my back on that. Not completely, not at the very end. Even after months behind bars, Wesley looked just the same. His tone, his smile, his little jokes, they had not changed. He still tried to make me laugh, like he always used to. He talked for a long time. I listened, but I no longer responded the way I once did. Time was almost up. I lowered my eyes, a strange, aching pressure building in my chest. I had loved him, I had hated him. And now, I no longer knew whether to laugh or to cry, but he looked at me gently and said, "Do not cry for me." Wesley lifted his hand, almost reflexively, to wipe away my tears. But then he stopped, faltered, and let it fall back into his lap. He said it again, his voice low and resigned. "Do not cry for me, Serafina. I am not worth it." He was right. He was obsessive, narrow-minded, stubborn, ruthless. He had been a cruel liar. But for 7 years, I had loved him, truly, deeply. Time was up. Just before the guards led him away, he looked back at me and said, "Do not forget me." I turned without answering and walked away. I never looked back. "I will hate you for the rest of my life." That was what I said in my heart. Thank you for watching today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, so feel free to share your opinions. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more great stories. We'll see you in the next video.